everybody, and welcome to the first video in the series in which I will share a fun e4 repertoire with you. And today we are starting with a fun response to the opening I see most of the time whenever I play e4, namely c5, and it's the Sicilian defense. In this video I will start by showing some games in the opening that I will recommend for you to climb the Elo ladder really quickly, and it's called the Smith-Morra Gambit. And I really like this opening because there's a lot of venom in the positions that you get. That's also very easy for black, especially when you're playing low elo games, to make crucial mistakes out of the opening and get you a winning position just in a few moves. And I do have to say it's not really an opening in which you have to count on tricks, because it's still a good opening even if the opponent knows what it's doing. So at the cost of a pawn, you will get very quick development and a big attack on the opponent's king. And the sacrifice we're going to make is playing d4, after which black can capture the pawn. And it's not really good to capture with the queen immediately, because you run into knight c6 and you have to run back maybe, and you're wasting tempi by moving your queen. Instead, we will play the move c3. And after black takes again and knight takes c3, you will get the opening point of the Smith-Morra Gambit. And in this video I will first show you some games, and after that I will talk you through some variations which black can play, and in following videos we will go deeper into that theory. Now let's take a look at the first game that we're going to talk about. It's between two rather strong players, played online, and it starts just the same way we described. e4, c5, d4, c takes d4, c3, e takes c3, and knight takes c3. And now black has a lot of ways to respond, but in the game he chose to play knight c6, after which white plays knight f3, d6, and c4. And these squares, f3 and c4, are usually the places you want to put your pieces in pretty much every system that black plays. So now black goes for e6, making some sort of Scheveningen structure, and white castled. Black wants to really develop his pieces on the king side, so he plays knight f6. White plays queen e2. The bishop goes to e7. The rook goes to d1. And now the first 9 moves of this game for white are pretty much automatic moves against most of the systems that black can play, because it just puts a lot of pressure on this queen, and this pawn on d6 will be very weak. So you have something to attack for white. Now black plays the first mistake of the game, and that's actually to play castles. And it's a mistake because you actually allow white to play e5. So black should have played e5 himself or done something about the threat. So now white finds the move e5, and this pawn is still pinned to the queen, so it can't take. Also, pushing is not smart because white can take the knight, and after you take the bishop, which is still not possible because it's pinned, where white continues by grabbing more pieces. So the knight has to move away, and it also wants to defend the d6 square once more, so it usually goes to e8. And now after you take the pawn on d6, it's really important to take with the bishop for black, because if he takes with the knight, it gets really dangerous. White can play bishop to f4 at first, using the fact that the knight can't move because the queen is in the way. And now this queen can't really defend the d6 square and get out of a pin. So let's say if it moves to c7, it's still pinned. The knight is still pinned to the queen, and you can play a move like knight to b5, and that's just lights out for black. So it's really important that black takes with the bishop, but after that white still plays knight to b5. The difference is that the queen can now move to e7, which was first occupied by the bishop, to defend and get out of the pins. So white has to find a different plan, and he found it in the game, which was to play bishop g5 at first. And now you say, well, we just play f6 and you have to do something about your bishop. That's true, but there's another weakness on e6, which will be exploited later in the game. White played bishop to e3 now, and this has a simple idea. You want to take the bishop, and after you take back with the knight, you want to put more pressure and pin the knight to the queen. So you had to do something about it. Now, black decided to play bishop back to b8, and white can just continue his development and put all his pieces into play by playing rook to c1. And now you see every piece is really working together to attack the queen in the center and really make sure that you get a win, because this attack is so big, there's pretty much nothing black can do still. He tried to hold on by playing b6, trying to make sure nothing comes to this square. But now, after white plays bishop to b3 and white plays, or black plays bishop to b7, then there's a killer move in this position. And if you want to find it, you can pause it. There's a lot of good moves actually, but this one just wins the queen immediately. And it's bishop to c5. And this is a really good sacrifice because you're just giving up a bishop, but in return you will get an unstoppable attack against the queen. Because after b takes e5, there's bishop takes e6, and now after the king moves, rook to d7 is just lights out. There's no way for this queen to escape, and you have to lose the queen, and after that the game. So that's the first game. It's really showing why the opening is so dangerous, because every piece that white develops really gets into the game really easily, and just at the cost of a pawn, which is rather unimportant. I think it's a really good sacrifice to make sure you get a good game and a good attack. Now we're going to take a look at the second game, and the second game started just the way the previous game started as well, with these moves, and after that black responds with knight to c6. Now white still plays knight to f3, and after this e6 happens, and you might want to think again about placing your bishop here, because against these two pawns it might seem a little stupid to place it there because it's blocked on this diagonal, but in the Smith-Morra we're still going to put it on c4. It's very important because it's the best square available to this bishop without blocking other pieces. And now black plays a rather dubious move. It's queen to c7, and this mostly relies on a trap that I will talk about in a different video. But white didn't fall for the trap in this video or in this game, and white plays castling, after which black plays knight to f6 and white plays knight to b5. Now this queen really wants to stay on this diagonal because it puts a lot of pressure on the king, but all of these squares are taken. So black decides to move back to b8, after which white found a pretty good pawn sacrifice that I will actually recommend for you in these systems, which is e5. And now black didn't believe white and took the pawn on e5, which is a mistake, because after white takes and the queen takes back, white has rook to e1, which simultaneously develops the rook and also attacks the queen. So you win a tempo with that. And you can go back to b8 or to c5. Usually people choose for queen to c5, but both of those moves actually mean that you're in trouble already. And in this position, white found some sort of move that is pretty hard to find, especially on lower levels, because it looks counterintuitive. He decided to move the bishop back to f1. And you might think we're trying to attack here, why are we moving a piece back to where it came from? Well, in this position, it's actually really good because when you move back the bishop, you still defend the knight on b5 and also open this file for the rook to come in. And if the rook is able to get to the c1 square and attack the queen, it's going to be big trouble for black. He did try to fight on because he found the move knight to d5, which stops white from playing bishop to e3. But instead of that, white just played bishop to g5, just clearing the way for the rook to come to this square. Now, black tried to scare white and say, well, I'm attacking your bishop, what are you going to do about it? But white just said, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to move the rook to c1. And now you can see this square on c7 becomes really weak. After this, black decides to move the queen to e7. And now white can just play bishop to f4. And you might think that you're just giving up a bishop for free, but no, because after you take, the c7 square is undefended. The knight can jump in, attacking both pieces, and this position is really winning for white. And black decided to resign. So another example of why this opening is very dangerous, and black really needs to look out in the opening. And I hope I got you really enthusiastic about this opening and you want to try to learn it yourself. And I will make sure that a lot of the systems that black is able to play are covered in separate videos. I've added a list to the right with all the separate variations that I'm going to be covering in next videos. So make sure to be there, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.